this is indeed also a very smart theme, and it's also incredibly deep and nuanced, and it's incredibly accurate, as it's true that if we have a religious conscience, then in the end we have to act on it, otherwise we will be consumed by hatred. Just look at what happened to Judas. It totally consumes us and makes us depressed, and if we totally allow our own worldview of idealism to be destroyed by getting into corrupt business, we will not be able to trust anything anymore, and of course we will look in the end at our faith like we cannot believe in it anymore, like everything is evil, even though there is always purity to be found. We just have to be willing to accept it, and if we involve ourselves with corrupt people, they of course won't have respect for our faith. That's why we should not intermarry with Protestants. Just want to stress it. Yes, I'm old-fashioned. Remember the good times? I mean, you of course can marry with Protestant, and then she'll get baptized and have your child baptized. In the Catholic Church, of course, not the Protestant. No! Do it again. So that was also a very smart theme, and it's true that we will often try to justify things religiously, but in the end that will be very difficult to do, and also it will be very difficult to keep our faith up if we don't act on it at all. If we truly value religious teachings, we have to be loyal to it, and many people have stopped being loyal to their religious teachings even though they still care about it, and this in the end hurts people very much, like pro-choice Catholics. Seriously, the Vatican excommunicated most of the members of the Catholics for Choice movement. Go fuck yourself. But so, yeah, it's a very nice and smart theme, and it's also still very relevant nowadays, as a lot of people struggle to reconcile their religion with the things they do. Like people who serve in wars often have problems justifying it religiously, but especially people who take part in corrupt things like child abuse, when their spouse commits it, staying quiet about it. In the end, people are consumed by it, and you will not ever be able to look at yourself properly again. So this was also very smart. Very strong is the theme on personal perception and the flaws it has. Because Cal at the beginning immediately hears that it's a suspicious conversation, but he tries to look at it objectively, and this allows him to stay calm under it. But when he has things going badly in his personal life and starts to become stressed, in the end becomes suspicious of the tapes, and when he hears there's something wrong with it, he starts to make assumptions. He assumes that when they say he would kill us if he had the chance, this indeed means that they will be murdered, and he becomes very worried, and he automatically assumes that the woman is traced because she's afraid of being murdered, and he gets emotionally involved even though he has no way of properly acting upon it. It's just that if we hinge too much on personal perspectives, we will automatically get involved in businesses we don't understand, and also that we quickly ponder too much unnecessarily on things we aren't capable of doing anything about anyways, because he's constantly hunted by the couple being murdered, but he isn't capable of doing anything about it, except for, of course, destroying the tapes. But often we still don't act upon these perceptions as we are too uncertain, so we get stuck doing nothing as he doesn't destroy the tapes, and in the end they're stolen. He thinks he knows they will do something, but he isn't aware of that the couple that's cheating upon the director will actually murder him, and then when he discovers they are, it totally destroys his perception of reality. And this is also what causes him to lose his faith and what causes him to become even more stressed. And we also see that if we don't understand the reasons we are doing the things we in the end are basically just tools in the hands of other people's morality, as another guy had just helped the wrong president being elected, and as a result also just made a lot of money, and he was basically willing to have the entire fate of the country be sold and just for some money, which is also once again very universal and historical, as some soldiers actually sold the Roman crown to corrupt emperors. So this is also very fitting for the Roman Catholicism theme. Also, it is generally very smart, as it is true that if we don't understand the proper reasons we're doing something, we don't know how far the people we're working for are willing to go and what it can result in. And in the case of Cole, it of course resulted in people being murdered, and so he constantly also feels sad, has good dreams about this woman dying, because he assumes she's a helpless victim, even though he doesn't properly understand the situation, and he just gets way too emotionally involved with something he doesn't understand, and allows this to twist his judgment and also to make him totally upset, and it allows him to hunt him. And it also shows that if we allow our personal perspectives to cloud us, this will in the end cause us to get into conflicts with people who want to stay on an objective field, because in the end you have to choose whether you want to actually be involved in conflicts and do something about it like Cole does, or whether you just want to be a tool in the hands of other people and make money, like his friends do. In the end, betray him and leave him alone. We see that in the end, if you want to approach things objectively, that you will then get into conflicts with people, because some people just want to make money and they don't want to consciously think about it, like the partner who constantly tries to get him to grow businesses, and that people also don't have the patience for somebody who just ponders over these issues, or for somebody who's basically more vulnerable, that in this business in the end there's no place for weakness. And so that's also a very smart theme. It is true that often when you don't approach things from an objective angle, you mix emotions into it, you ponder too much on things, like a lot of people who analyze political conspiracy theories get way too emotional, like on 9/11. Yes, I brought it up, bringing in, oh, Bush wanted to murder people, it was the Jews. And then also, of course, yeah, I'm gonna get so many thumbs down for this, and so many thumbs up, that a lot of people just want to make money, and therefore they won't in any way be interested in a more personal perspective upon it, and therefore they will also mistreat you over it and hurt you. And if you truly want to do something about problems, you have to understand them. And if you truly want to be moral, you have to also really understand what you're doing. You have to consciously consider your own actions. You have to do that consistently, and you have to not let your emotions get the better of you, but just really act upon them. And it also shows that indeed things can often very much be different from how we understand them to be, and that also if we don't act with proper foreknowledge, we don't even know how important the things we're doing we can be. Many soldiers who committed heinous acts thought that they were just committing very small murders, when in the end they caused the most horrible castrations. And that you can also really see in how World War I was started, with just the shooting of one person. So this was also a very smart and deep theme. Also, there's a great theme on self-preservation versus heroism, and I can of course very well relate to that, because I know all about self-preservation. Recently, I saw a half Moroccan, half Hispanic guy walking next to my house. There are a lot of those here in the Netherlands. And I know what you're thinking, wait a minute, why did you mention that he was a Moroccan? No, it's just a fun little trivia. I thought it would be interesting to bring up. But so the point is, I thought that he might be dangerous. He just looked kind of suspicious. I mean, sure, he was walking there with his kids, and they were all laughing and everything, but he might just have been planning to rob me. He had a shopping bag with him after all, clearly to load something like my TV in. So I did the most logical thing. I got him to come to my house by offering him candy, because he seemed to just be walking by, and I couldn't let that happen, because he was planning to come back later, clearly. So while he was eating the candy, I shot him in the back. But of course, I was standing my ground, and don't I have a right to that? Oh, apparently in the Netherlands I don't. You're not even allowed to own guns, and this here actually is considered a hate crime, and I'm gonna go to jail for life. I'm gonna peel away a couple of years, of course, by saying that I didn't know what I was doing and I had a sad youth, and of course I'm gonna appeal to the influence of the right-wing masses. Yes, they do support hate crimes. They actually are just a bunch of racists. That's true. That's actually a stereotype that we're trying to fight, but in the end we have to acknowledge that that's the way we are. But so tell me, what is wrong with that? The answer is of course everything, but who cares? So the point is, I'm just going to continue the show from the underground world, which once again just looks exactly the same like my room. And of course I'm completely losing track of what matters here, which was... Oh yeah, so personally I thought that Iron Man 2 was still really good. Sure, it has some flaws. I thought the villains indeed didn't tie into the main story very well, but it still developed Tony Stark very well. I think people underrated in that sense, and yes, it was comedic, but so was the first film, and I thought it did a good job at also having some nice action, and at the same time also being dramatic in the right points. Iron Man 2 I think was the weakest of the pre-Avenger Marvel films, but I still think it was good enough. I don't really think it's horrible. I'm kind of in the same ballpark as a lot of the more moderate fans, although I'm more positive than Captain Logan. I thought 2.5 out of 4 was too little. Although I am glad that he could see the flaws in that, the same way that he saw them in underrated films like X-Men: The Last Stand. But... no, that isn't right. The film was bad, you're right, I'm sorry. But so, this theme is very strong, because we see at the beginning that Cole's living a very secretive life. He's got multiple locks in his house, and he gets totally frustrated when it looks as though somebody got in, and he gets totally cranky, and he only likes to focus on not allowing other people in, even though people just like to give him nice presents. So we see that self-preservation often comes at the expense of being nice and being able to enjoy our contact with people, and this makes him cranky, and he focuses solely on the job of spying on people, and this of course makes him money, and also ties into a later theme of greed, and he's satisfying himself with that and keeping him rich, but as a result he can hurt other people, and at first he doesn't like to think about the moral implications of this, but when he sees that he himself is in danger, he starts to become more careful. And we see that he's constantly spying upon his girlfriend, because he's looking at her from behind the staircase, and she herself notices this, and instead of talking this over, he's secretive about this as well. He just doesn't want to discuss his personal life, even though she greatly likes him and he likes her as well. And they have nice contact, but in the end this starts to ruin their relationship, and this hurts him, and her not knowing where he lives of course hurts their relationship as well. So we see that being secretive and trying to preserve ourselves means that we also close ourselves off from things like love and from a good healthy relationship, and that this also just hurts the feelings of the people around us. And then he becomes even more cranky and annoyed, and then he decides that he doesn't want to give the tapes when he realizes how suspicious this is, and he at first tries to be good in the middle in this. But at the same time, he doesn't destroy the tapes because he still considers giving them when the boss himself is there, because he still wants to make the money. He still wants to stay within this field and preserve his own business prospects. That's also why in the past, when he caused the death of 2 people, he tried to convince himself that it wasn't his fault. But at the same time, he still feels guilty about that as well. And so we see that if you don't choose between the path of following your own conscience or between following your own gains, that you become totally conflicted and you only feel bad both ways, because now he at first isn't making the money, but at the same time isn't helping those people either, and he neglects to destroy the tapes, and thereby can cause them to fall into the wrong hands. And he then also gets cranky and he hurts the people around him. And we see that if you try to have a good moral conscience like he does, because he also greatly cares about his religion, but you at the same time work with corrupt people, they will do things like spout blasphemy. Is of course evil people always do that. Anyone who insults the Virgin Mary, or God, of course, he also matters, they of course automatically will go to hell. But especially the Virgin Mary, she's important because we've got over 4 dogmas about her. And by the way, how many do we have about God? Was it 2, 1, or do we even have dogmas on that? Well, isn't that important, of course. But so that shows once again that not only will you become conflicted yourself, but you will also get into a conflicting environment. And so we see that this will also cause you to become more stressed and to hurt the people around you, because he also hurts Stan, his friend, because he at the same time wants to be secretive towards him. So it hurts our friendships and it hurts our relationships, and it at the same time also hurts our business prospects and our own conscience. And he then feels guilty and he does confession, and he at the same time tries to talk himself out of the fact that he shouldn't feel guilty about this. So this often causes a struggle with his religion, but in the end he becomes more careful and he considers not giving the tapes, but when he's followed at the convention, we see that trying to do the right moral thing within such a corrupt environment will cause us to be surrounded by people who will do things like stalk us and will endanger our own safety. And then he of course gets involved with those corrupt workers who try to convince him to make corrupt deals with them, which of course can endanger even more people and will cause him to feel even more guilty. But by not doing so, he won't be able to be successful in this business. So we see that if you want to follow your moral conscience, you shouldn't enter a world where you need to be immoral, because it's impossible to strike such a balance, as you need to be extreme in such environments in order to survive. And so he's also once again reminded of the horrible things that happened in the past, and he starts to feel even more guilty and becomes very conflicted, and he becomes totally restless, and we see that in the end it causes even things like nightmares and to totally lose ourselves, and that we'll be involved by people who will betray us, like that woman he was dating after he and his friends had went to the party. And so we see that in the end you will then lose everything, and we also see that it's very difficult to stray away from a corrupt path, because then he gets his $15,000 and he wants to throw them away as he sees how corrupt this is, and this might result in the deaths of many people, but he cannot bring himself to do it, and so he keeps them. And he also only actually cares just about collecting money to feel safe and about his job, because he doesn't even have many valuable things he cares about, and he doesn't even care that much when he breaks down his apartment in the end. So in the end he's left with nothing really. And he also becomes even more conflicted because he wants to do the right thing now, but he doesn't have the heroic spirit, so he now just becomes an unwilling witness to horrible events, like the murder of the director by the couple, and so he just has to witness it because he's too indecisive to be heroic. He goes there to watch it, but in the end he has to hide under the bed and is totally overwhelmed, and then he discovers that he totally misunderstood it, so he isn't even intellectually up to the challenge. So he discovers that he's totally unfit, and he's frustrated and angry, and he becomes hysterical, and then he sees they're bugging him, and he even loses his self-preservation because he made enemies that were very powerful, and then he loses everything he cares about, and he still failed to be a moral help, and he still cannot leave this business, because we see that if we care too much about our own self-preservation, we're also often too indecisive to do something about being in a moral world or being unhappy, because if we in the end still want to make money, we still want to be successful, and we cannot let go of our preset goals. And we also see that in the end we will not truly be safe, because we're in a way to corrupt world. And we also see that as a result of him being indecisive, that he doesn't belong in this world, because you cannot be indecisive in a world of corruption. You have to be very strong, otherwise you will eventually just be a tool in the hands of other people. And that's what he was, a tool for corruption. And so we see that this in the end makes you totally angry and frustrated, as he becomes totally more cranky and frustrated all the time, and he becomes only more secretive, and he then also becomes paranoid, and he becomes guilt-ridden, and he tries to resolve these problems, but he's too indecisive and too much in the middle, and in the end this totally ruins his relationships with all the people around him, and it also makes him less successful, and he becomes cranky and frustrated. So we see that it will only cause you to become more and more desperate, and that it will cause you to become restless, feel guilty, feel sad, be overwhelmed, and be stressed, exist, and at the same time feel empty and powerless and be depressed because we are moral people, but we involve ourselves within immoral worlds, and we are too moral to be able to go along with this. So we will be witnesses to corruption, and therefore we will be frustrated and will be sad that we cannot do anything, but because we try to do something about it, but we fail because we're not up to that world, because we're also too weak and we should just live a more relaxed life. As a result, we will in the end feel scared, and we will also make powerful enemies and be spied upon, and will therefore also be sad and be hopeless and be paranoid, and we will also destroy the relationships we care about and feel lonely and feel frustrated. So in the end, it does almost every negative thing you can by not knowing in what world you belong.